All right, well, we were just talking about Zelda and the Twilight Princess thing, and that was pretty much one of the first re-releases of a game. Like an HD re-release, even though it wasn't HD because it was to the Wii. The second topic for today is HD re-releases. So this week, God of War 3 Remastered announced. Batman Arkham 1 and 2 rumored to be coming out soon. There's some talk about a Mass Effect trilogy. It's just like, all right.
Devil May Cry 4.
Devil May Cry 4, which we already knew about, but there was like more news. Because didn't DMC just come out?
The Definitive Edition came out like a couple weeks ago, or 1 week ago or something.
And Borderlands Collection just came out today.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just like, holy shit. Everything is getting an HD remaster or upgrade or whatever the hell you want to call it. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? And what games need it?
I was telling Colin this morning that I think it works best when there's been a certain period in between its release and the re-release, and also the game benefits from it. So like, let's say GTA 5, there wasn't much space between it, but they added that first person mode. That was a big thing. I was telling Colin that one of my favorites was Beyond Good and Evil HD because it had been long enough, and I had never. That was one of the like holes in my gaming history is that I never played Beyond Good and Evil, and everyone loves it. So by the time it came out on XBLA, it was like, okay, it will look better than ever, and this will be my first time playing it. And now, I love that game. It was great. So ideally, enough space and some actual added functionality. Whereas you talk about stuff like Arkham City, if they just re-release that and don't really add anything, it's like, that came out a couple fucking years ago. I don't think we need that.
I completely agree. And also at the same time, it's like, man, Batman, like if they release an HD remix now, it's like, I would rather prefer one being further down the line once graphics are pushed even further, right, at that point, and to see what it looks like then as opposed to just a small little bump and update.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually on a different side of this. I love them, and I think that they're good, and like it's just because I'm a snob when it comes to this shit, so just knowing that there's a better version out there, I'm like, I want that. But then that leads to bad problems where it's just like I find myself kind of waiting for that. Like I haven't played the Arkham games ever. And it's like, I want to, and I want to play them before night comes out. But it's like, knowing that there's this HD one coming out, I'm like, well, fuck, should I just wait and play that? Same thing happened with Tomb Raider. It's like, I knew there was going to be an HD one coming out. And then it just leads to this thing where I never play the game. It's just like, perpetually, I'm just waiting for the better version. And then when, like what you were saying for Beyond Good and Evil, I played through the Kingdom Hearts games, and I love them, but I've always been waiting for an excuse to replay them. And then they're like, all right, we're doing the HD remix versions. And I was super excited, but then it's like, oh, but they're not for PS4. And it's like, damn it. Like, I want to play it on PS4. I don't want to have to hook up my PS3. And it causes all these issues where we already dealt with this last generation where they took all the PS2 games, upgraded them to PS3. Now we're seeing PS3 games get upgraded to PS4. But now there's some PS2 games getting upgraded for PS4. Like Final Fantasy X. 10 and 10-2 come out they get upgraded for PS3. Now it's announced that's being re-released on PS4 with added shit. And it's like,
It made way more sense when it was PS2 to PS3 because, like, I remember when God of War 2 came out because I was so excited for that game. But if I remember right, it was a few months after the PS3 was actually out. So I remember it was such a bummer to like, oh, here's this game I want so bad, but it's on the last generation. So when they announced that HD thing, it's like, okay, this is how I wanted to play that game.
Yeah.
But God of War 3 still looks fucking awesome if you put that in on a PS3. So it'll look a little bit better on PS4, but that seems less necessary to me.
I mean, then there's things like 60 frames per second and all that stuff. But it's like, that's great and all, but it's like, we don't need that. But then the God of War thing's an interesting thing too. It's like, wait, it's just 3? You're not giving me the full collection that you've already released like 10 million times?
It doesn't make any sense.
Like, why? Why?
Yeah, I think I've not been able to articulate it well because I really do have like a visceral reaction when these things get announced, and it's getting worse and worse for me. Like, it just, yes, commercially it makes sense. People are paying for these games, and they're going to make money, and these publishers are going to make money on them. It's easy money too, and I don't think that, the argument some people make is invalid that, well, these resources could be used to make new games. No, not necessarily. It's not like it's not like Rocksteady's fucking porting these games over. Like they're not. So it's a porting studio like Bluepoint or someone that's doing these things. This is what they do. There are studios that are designed, really good studios that are designed just to do this. So it's, that's what they do, and that's the nature of them in that ecosystem. It's just, I was explaining to Dan before that I feel like the way I can articulate it best is that when you release games like this over and over and over again, it just loses what made them special to begin with when you got a collection. And I always bring back a game I know you really love, which is Super Mario All-Stars. When that came to Super Nintendo, that was a fucking big deal, and we had never really seen anything like that. And that was a revolutionary thing. And then they re-released it again with Mario World, where
that was definitely the first HD remake.
And I was like, this is cool because they weren't doing it for everything. They didn't do it for everything. You didn't see Konami do it with Castlevania or Capcom do it with Mega Man. You saw Tecmo, well, it was just Tecmo at the time doing it with Ninja Gaiden on Super Nintendo, but there wasn't this propensity to re-release everything and expect that, well, now it's time to bring it to this, and now it's time to bring it to this. And like, so when Sony really is responsible for starting this, unfortunately for them, because God of War was really the first example of a game that was re-released last generation that was of the PS2 era generation, where they're like, we're going to bring the God of War games out. And there was a reason for it. Is because God of War 3 was coming out. So they're like, well, let's prepare you for this. Mm-hmm. But then they did it with Sly Cooper, and it was like, okay, that makes sense. And then they did it with Team Ico, and I'm like, all right, that made sense. Clearly that was for The Last Guardian, which never came out.
Here's Ratchet and Clank.
And then Ratchet and Jak and Daxter. Exactly. And it's like, all right, guys. And then everyone else started doing it. Then Ubisoft's like, oh, what about Splinter Cell? What about Prince of Persia? And then Microsoft's like, what about Halo? And they haven't done. Surprisingly, I haven't done it with Gears yet. You have to assume that's going to happen. Yeah. So suddenly, but then you look at it and it's like, okay, like Dan said, Batman Arkham City just came out. You know, like it literally just came out in like 2011 or 2012 or something like that. It's like, you know, and or even more egregious was like Sleeping Dogs or Devil May Cry, like the DMC.
Yeah,
it's like, guys, just stop and take a moment and wonder if you're using like precious mind share
and all that stuff.
You know, like when you know, I think Dan made a good point where it's like we need more time and distance, because people are like, well, what would be something that was exciting to you? I'm like, well, Final Fantasy VII coming out, even if they're not doing anything to it, that's exciting because we haven't played that on a console in a long time. You have to play the PS1 Classic, so it has trophies. It's the same thing, whatever. There's space and time. That's something we've been asking for and wanting. Tactics, I think, would be another good example, or Symphony of the Night. Like re-releasing those games and putting them in widescreen or something like that would be really cool.
Did that with Tactics on PSP.
Yeah, with the War of the Lions. And I wonder, should we wait and be a little more selective? Mm-hmm. I would fucking kill for a Mega Man collection with trophies and stuff like that. But they haven't been running that into the ground and re-released it a million different times, so it's a little different. Like, I just think that there needs to be distance, and I think that you have to use that mindshare a little more critically, in the sense that not everything needs to be out. Yes, I understand people didn't own the old consoles, and people didn't get to play those games. You don't get to play. Well, you can get to play whatever you want. I don't mean it like that, but you don't have to play everything. It's okay. Yeah. I can make that excuse for literally any game. So that cannot be the justification. I can say, oh, we didn't play Naughty Bear. We gotta have Naughty Bear back. You know,
Naughty Bear fucking HD collection.
You know what I mean? Running at 20 frames a second instead of 5.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know what I'm saying? It's like you can make that excuse. Well, guys, I didn't get to play Naughty Bear last generation, so it's got to come back now. Like, that's not a valid excuse. Like, what makes the game special, and why does it need to exist today? Is the question we have to have.
But I think a lot of that doesn't come so much from the gamers of them being like, well, I didn't get to play it, but it's more like the developers are like, fuck, they didn't get to play this game. Like, there's this whole new set of people that are looking for games, especially now when there isn't those AAA titles out there yet, where it's like, hey, we can now give these people these experiences we already made. You know, that we want them to have as part of their experience to get them ready for Arkham Knight or to get them ready for whatever the hell the next thing is.
Well, and keep in mind, too, that like last generation, 360 tended to be kind of the dominant one over PS3. And it seems like so far, Sony's getting way more coming this way. So there's a lot of people that probably have a PS4 this generation that didn't have a PS3. So stuff like God of War 3 or The Last of Us, this might be their first chance to play it. So I do kind of understand them doing that on the Sony side.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that is, like, I agree with what you're saying, but what he's saying about the fact that just this is the first time ever that there is that shift. Well, not the first time ever, but it's the first time there's a shift from Xbox to PlayStation. You know, so it's like PlayStation has all these great games, and they're like, hey Alfredo, you want to play Last of Us? I know you haven't because you've been a fucking Xbot forever, but it's like, now you can. You know? But then on your side, you get freaking Halo Master Chief Collection, which, like, problems aside of all the, you know, the launch and stuff, that's a fucking HD collection, man.
Yeah, but I mean, what, like, the focus is 2, and that's awesome, right? Because like we're bringing back 2. The focus is like 4. I'd be like, what the hell are you doing? Like,
yeah,
there needs to be time. Like, and if given enough time, it's like there's a lot of want behind it. There's a lot of momentum behind it, and it's like at that point, I don't care if like you add a million features. It's just I haven't played that in a long time. Give it to me, right? So yeah, I don't know. It's frustrating.
Like Onimusha. I would love an Onimusha.
Yeah, I would love that too, because there's been so much time that we went an entire generation without an Onimusha game. There has been an Onimusha game since 2006, so it's like, you know, that's the major difference, is that anything can come back if given enough time. But I don't like the idea of just shoving things back into a next. Like we were talking about with the pre-sequel, which just came out on PS4. That's a different story, because that was so predictable that I didn't even bother playing the pre-sequel, because I was like, that is absolutely positively coming out on PlayStation 4. You know. It's too fucking weird that it's coming out only on PS3 at the time it came out, which was the fall, like right before the new consoles launch. I mean, there's no so you stay away from it with the expectation, and I don't want those expectations. You know, I don't want to just be waiting forever for the definitive version of the game. Like, release your game as if it is the definitive version of the game, and if there's demand in the future, then release it, but give it time. You know, like that. And I think again, that's why people are excited about Final Fantasy VII, even if it's not, they didn't do anything to it.
No one's excited about that, Colin.
I think a lot of people are.
No one is excited about it.
I get a lot of tweets about that because people are like, well, we can't play our PS1 classics on PS4. We've been asking for something for them. This is them saying we're not going to give you what you want.
But they can play it on PS3.
They can, but that's the point you're making, is that not everyone had access to a PS3 or a Vita or a PSP. So but the point is that there's time, and that's a classic. So
But, I mean, there's not time for that. Like, that literally has been re-released like on PS3, PSP, you know what I mean? Like, they've done that, like, big marketing push a million times. This is the first time we're getting the PC version.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But that's the point, is that there was a PS1 classic that was available on relegated to certain consoles, but Final Fantasy VII has never been tinkered with ever. So this is the best you're going to get. Mm-hmm. And I think that it made sense for them to do it as an... I actually give Square Enix credit in hindsight that people have been asking and expecting that they were going to remake Final Fantasy VII, and I think you can understand why they're not going to, because first of all, that wouldn't inspire anyone at Square Enix. They don't want to do that. They want to make their own games, and you can never remake it in a way that's satisfactory, so you don't bother.
Yeah.
So you just say, well, here it is. Just like they did with Final Fantasy X. They just put it in fucking widescreen. They didn't do anything in that game.
They didn't touch that game.
They up-res the game and put the international version.
Yeah.
And
they totally redid all the music.
I think you're giving it a little too much credit.
No, they completely redid the music.
Tim, this was a hash job that they did, and they're doing it again on PS4. The point is.
Well, the re-releasing it on PS4, that's some bullshit. Because I think the only new function, if I read this correctly, is that you can switch between the new and old music.
The point is that they treated 10 like, even though they didn't do much to 10. They treated it like it was something special, and they made it in an event. They didn't just shit it out or whatever. And I give them credit for that too. There was when we were at IGN, genuine excitement. I remember wondering and asking aloud, like, why aren't we covering this game more? Because people are really into it. Mm-hmm. So I think you have to just kind of take things as they come. Not everything needs to be re-released. I certainly question. I'm not a Devil May Cry fan by any stretch of the imagination, but when they're re-releasing DMC, Ninja Theory's DMC 2 years after it came out, I'm like, why? Mm-hmm. No one seemed to really care much about it the first time around. I'm not really trying to be super mean about it, but it's just like, the game wasn't a smash hit. You know, you don't see Sony going back into the Ninja Theory well and being like, well, let's re-release Heavenly Sword because we can. You know what I mean? Like, I just want people to be a little bit more deliberate in the way that they release these games. That said, they exist. People are going to speak with their wallets. It seems like, again, like people want them. I just want it to feel special again. I want that Super Mario All-Stars moment again. Or that God of War collection moment again. Or I was like, wow, I didn't expect that. Because now I expect it for everything. Everything's going to come back out again. What are we going to get? Bloodborne on PS5? We're going to get... You know, they're going to bring back Mag and fucking SOCOM 4 at some point or something? Like, what are they... Like, where does it end?
So you say something special. Like, what if it was just, like, a big sweeping thing to where it's like, here is the Mario collection with Mario's 1 through 3, World, 64, you know, Sunshine, both galaxies, like that. Like, that many... Is it a quantity thing for you?
To me, it's not a quantity thing. It's just... I mean, that would be awesome. Because Mario's awesome, and we want more Mario. But again, I just want some... I want people to feel a little more reluctant. Let's focus on new games and new IP. Not making the argument that re-releasing these old games takes away from those ideas, but it certainly takes away from the marketing budget for those ideas. It certainly takes away from money spent on those ideas from publishers that are also paying for the re-releases. I just, like anything else, I do feel like it's becoming too much. And eventually, and the only way we're going to know, it's like with franchise fatigue, with games like Call of Duty, which are starting to plateau, you're only going to find out that it's too much when it's too late. You know, like the ball's already in play, and so I'm just interested to see how it all falls apart. But you know, Borderlands the pre-sequel, Sleeping Dogs, DMC, like these just came out.
Yeah.
So that's the only point I'm trying to make. If we want to go back and find some classics, Onimusha is a great example, or a really good example. Those are fantastic games, or even, you know, like Perfect Dark or Jet Force or something like these old N64 games that you can do something with, or again, Symphony of the Night, like the game, just give it some time, give it some distance, let people yearn for them and long for them, and then you give it to them. Because I don't think anyone's longing for DMC, because you can just go into the store right now, find a copy of it on the shelf, brand new, put it in your PS3 and play it, because it just came out.
Play as Virgil. Come Come on, man.
Actually, you can.
Oh, whatever. I don't know. Whatever the fuck. You can't play as lady or something?
You can't do turbo mode, which speeds it up to 20%.
There you go.
And there's some other skins and stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure there's
60 frames a second.
And I want to leave it with this, and this is I think an important thing, and I just thought about this, but let's be concerned and remember the lessons of shovelware. Let's remember the lessons of volume in terms of being too many games, of washing the market with too much shit, and how bad and detrimental that's been in the past for hardware and in the industry in itself. And these games for me are kind of shovelware. You know, like this generation's Wii shovelware. Are these games just coming out? Just every game's coming out again. And that's not ultimately, that might make some people money in the short run, but I'm interested to see what it looks like in 3 or 4 years, what that market looks like. And
it's going to do it again.
If there's going to be,
I don't think it's going to go away. Like it's just going to like happen again and again. But
I'm eager for. I like going back and playing old games. Right, we just played I played 8 Mega Man games on a Twitch stream last week. I love those games. Right, we just did Symphony of the Night for our book club. I like going back, but let's also look forward and be excited about the games that are coming out. I'm excited about the games that are coming out. If you didn't play the Arkham games, I respect that. Plug in your PS3 and play them. Mm-hmm. You know, like I don't know, whatever. I understand that it's a losing argument.
No, I mean it is what it is.